What you're gonna hear from me, it's not gonna be so much about immersive technologies or AI. I'm here mostly to make the case for the use of design, basically, in cultural heritage data, and how information visualization can help us navigate in this realm of linked data. And our case study here is fashion, basically. So I'm gonna talk about the project so-called Restaging Fashion, or the abbreviation is REFA. Just some short words about our team. We are based, or I used to be based because now I'm leaving the team. We are the UCLAB. This is a team at the University of Applied Sciences in Potsdam, near Berlin. Basically, it's a lab that is based on that has as main focus information visualization. So most of the people here are designers, but we are also people outside of the design itself. Yeah, you see me, my colleague, also Giacomo, who couldn't attend, but he's a co-presenter, and also Sabine. We are the three people who actually work on the Restaging Fashion project, and I'm gonna talk more about it. So basically, it's about the contextualization of vestimentary sources. As you can see, there are many disciplines being involved. Of course, the main areas, we are a transdisciplinary team. I'm representing mostly the information science perspective. We have information visualization, this is Giacomo. We have art history and specifically fashion history, this is Sabine. But there are also many more other fields that, of course, influence our work. Let's focus a little on the content itself. What basically we're trying to visualize is a very tiny part of the Lipperheide Costume Library that was at the end of the 19th century, but now it belongs to the State Museums of Berlin. It's supposed to be the library itself, the costume library. It's supposed to be the largest fashion library in the world. It has about 600 paintings and miniatures that depict fashion, and also about 100,000 drawings and also graphic material that also depict fashion from different areas from the 16th century to the 19th century, basically. A very tiny part of the collection that we have tried to include in our visualization project comes also from the Germanisches Nationalmuseum in Nuremberg. In that case, we just took the textiles and the material itself, the realia, and for purposes of comparative analysis, and we did some 3D scanning of those items and included in our project. So as with every project, we always start with the digitization of resources. This is actually something that started before the beginning of the Restaging Fashion project, so before 2020, because this is the starting point of the project, and now we are basically in the last month of it. And of course, we cannot do any project if we don't have data. And actually, this information here exists in a database that existed before the Restaging Fashion project started. So that was even before 2020. And Sabine de Günther, the art historian, she started documenting our sources, basically the paintings and the miniatures. That was the previous database. And then during the project, we moved our data to an Omeka instance, and we also added the documentation for the prints and drawings in our collection. And for the people who are here expert with the metadata world, they can already see this class E22 human-made objects. This is an indication that basically we are based on the CDOC CRM model, which has its difficulties, to say the least. If you can see here, this is just a graph that shows the different classes that are used in CDOC CRM, and it's really hard many times to differentiate between the different classes, and it becomes even harder when you have to explain the different properties that are being involved in CDOC CRM and find the differences between them. So really this makes it a difficult work. And if you also want to visualize all these graphs, and we'll come back to this slide later in the presentation, basically we can see how difficult it is for the end user to navigate through these graphs and linked data graphs, and being able to understand meanings and see connections between the nodes. So this is really, for everybody, even for experts, it's really hard to navigate in this realm of data. But I will go back to the art history research, because this plays an important role in our visualization attempts to be able to understand how an art historian works and how art historians document the sources that they try to they try to present, and how basically they produce knowledge. And it is very important to have an idea about the mindset of the research being behind humanities research, because definitely it would be much easier for a visualization project and for any data work if we had to do only with empirical data, like it is with the sciences. But here we have humanities, and the characteristic of researchers in this field is a lot of contemplation, a lot of reflection. The painting can be a starting point, but then you have to do a lot of research. Then you produce monographs, which means that narration plays also a very important part in the presentation of your own research. And also there are a lot of missing data, or there's a lot of uncertainty involved when it comes to presenting humanities research. And here you see an example. On the left is German, but the same thing is in English on the right. And this is part of an essay, which is part of the visualization, as I will show also later. And with red, I just highlighted these elements of uncertainty that basically comes along with any explanation about artworks and historical content and any context that basically goes along with a painting. And also here the art historian makes like a statement about missing information, because also not having some information that is important for making a case, you also need to state that. So all of this is part of art historical research, and also in fashion history in this case. This picture here shows just an index card, just to make the case that documentation plays also a very important role. The context is important to have access to archival material that provides more context about our resources. Provenance is a very significant keyword in art history. So we know more about the life cycle of an object from its birth, from its creation, until its current position in the museum. So taking all of this into consideration, taking into consideration the fact that text is an important part in presenting humanities research, and also juxtaposing it with data, with these nodes and these standalone pieces of information, we came with the idea how we can combine these two elements. So in this case, it's a very basic prototype, a very basic example. We have the portrait of Anne, Queen of England, and then we see how this is connected to its visual depiction. Then we have the portrait of Charles I first, who is also affiliated. It's a counterpart painting. Then we have links to the different documentation sources. Q stands for Quellen in German, which is sources. And then we have also other information that is related to classification. This relates back to research that started basically in the 60s. At least Ted Nelson, with his project Xanadu, he has been a visionary of the web, and he also coined the term hypertext. So there was this idea how you can bring, he has envisioned new kinds of, new formats of electronic documents, and how through transclusion you can have parts of one text appearing in another text, but the most important thing is how we can show connections between different documents. This hasn't been very well distributed, but still is an interesting point of view that also affects our way of thinking. So going back to the essays that I briefly mentioned before, we thought that we need to include narration, we need to include text in our visualization, so kind of an online exhibition. You cannot have linked data, at least the way we thought about it, only presenting nodes and edges between them, but you need to provide more context. And we wanted to keep this traditional form of communicating humanities research also in fashion history. So the basic idea was to, basically that was the task for the curator, for the art historian, to pick out specific words that are important, and then we would connect these words with the records, the data records in our Omeka instance. For example, this could be a concept, this could be a visual work, could be also a creator, it could be a geographical place, it could be many things. How we do this, this is just a small detail on the technical side, basically just by having, I mean, one part of the architecture, but something that is easy to understand, by having markdown documents for the essays, so that we can link these specific keywords that are important for us to include in the visualization of the data. We could, through the API of Omeka, we could link these specific words with their records in Omeka, and then we could extract the data and create the visualization. Another important thing was to include some, to advance the experience factor for our end users. And there is this idea of information flaneur, which basically this term comes back to an article from 2011, but it was important not only to show on the deep level the different details about artworks, but take into consideration the visual perception of the end users, and also put some focus on the affect, so make the experience more interesting and give some ideas about how people could circulate within this bunch of data. And we wanted to provide something that would be more interesting. And this is the first prototype, which really goes fast right now. Maybe it's hard to understand in this speed, but still it gives you an idea about how we thought about it. So you see the essay in the middle, the specific terms that we wanted to connect with our link data are in blue. And then when a link is at the top of a viewport of the window that the user sees, then in the graph we have that term being highlighted, and then the end user has the freedom either to navigate, keep navigating in the text, keep scrolling down the text, or go to the graph and also get information and see where this information is, where this data, where this entity is located within the whole realm of, or this web of data. But then this is how we are right now, and at least this is in a much slower speed, so it's easier for you also to follow. So basically, it's again the essay. Here we have the exploration of the graph on the right, but now the main idea, and we want to go out of this too much information that was available in the previous prototype. We wanted to give more of a feeling of circulation within this data. So basically you choose again an item from our database, then you see the relationships, and they connect to the different entities, but then you're free to select one of those records, and then you see all the properties that are related to that record or to that entity, and this goes along the way basically indefinitely, as far as I know. So coming back, and I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I showed this slide before. It's important to think about granularity in linked data and how difficult it is. Again, I will pinpoint the same thing for the end user to understand graphs and navigate in knowledge graphs. For example, here, if I zoom in and I see how inscriptions in the model that we use, which is basically ECRM, is just an old implementation of CDOC CRM. Basically, it's the same structure, and you have black nodes, and then you see for an inscription, you see so many different nodes that either show you the symbolic content, the node, the documented in the type. This is really, for the end user, is hard to understand. We always need to have take into consideration that linked data is made for machines, but we always have to keep in mind a human readable perspective. And for example, in this case, this is just a very simplified version of a JSON LD serialization for an inscription. In case of having this nested information, then we could have something like a symbol value where we concatenate all this information about the inscription, and maybe in that case, you can present that to the end user. The machine still is gonna read your JSON LD. So conclusions. When we practice data modeling, basically we have a trade-off between standardization and semantic accuracy. As I mentioned before, there are these issues with uncertainty, and this is not so easy to depict in a knowledge graph. This is why we need an open space to formulate and present tentative observations, so that this elaborate, reflective, and complex information can be represented in different kinds of new, innovative, intuitive, maybe interfaces. And I'm finishing with this quote, which basically comes from the area of critical cartography. It doesn't have to do here with fashion history, but basically talks about data visualization and maps, and just to pinpoint this performative side of data representation. So data basically has a performative element within it. It can help us, helps us develop our knowledge about things and shapes our understanding of the world. So that was from me and my colleagues, my two other colleagues, and here are some sources if you need more information.
Thank you, Ilias. That was fascinating. The way that you showed the interface as it is now, I can imagine getting completely lost in it. And I want to find if there is an end at some point, because it doesn't seem like there is. I think that we have time for one question. Do we have a question from the audience? Yes, we have multiple. Maybe you there, can we throw that person a catch box? I will do it for you. Thank you. Are you ready? Lovely.
Hello. Oh, yes.
Can you please stand up as well?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Hello. So thank you for your presentation. This seems to me like a combination of like the Wikipedia rabbit hole tags, you know, those little pop-up text bubbles, but all in a much more user-friendly way. I can really imagine myself scrolling down and having these notes more visually available to me, and thus easier for me to access. Now, is this something that you're looking to become a standard? Like, if I go to Wikipedia in the future, will they be using this kind of format, or is this a more of a private endeavor that would stay within a specific museum or perhaps a licensed program? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. No, in our case, this is a private thing. So the code is available online. It's on GitHub. And basically, now the last months, we also want to make it a little more general, and we tested it basically, at least for Omeka, for other institutions that use Omeka instances, they can also use our code, and then they can visualize the same way their collections. So we are very, very open with this.
Lovely, thank you. You can pass it back to the front. Let's thank Ilias one more time. Thank you so much for your presentation.